21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.
A few years ago, I was thinking, what do I want to do with my next challenge? I'd retired from my previous business, and I tinkered with a number of things. I'd always been interested in education, and it was very clear that there were a lot of problems with the education system. And since I live in the States and I have 4 kids, some of whom are in college, others that are coming up to college age, university, of course, I had a lot of focus on the university system. And we all know that a lot of people are very unhappy with the university system. In fact, everyone seems to be angry on all sides. They feel people aren't paid enough. They feel it's too expensive. They feel it's too political. They feel it's not political enough. They feel they're not teaching the right things. There's too high an admin burden. The admin people aren't doing what they should be doing. It doesn't matter where you look. And so I wanted to learn a bit more about what some of my peers and friends thought about college. And so I just had a series of questions that I asked them. And the first one was, hey, why do you want your kids to go to college? Because I picked people who either their kids were in college, were coming up to the age, that sort of thing. And I said, why do you want them to go to college? But before that, I asked them, have you considered anything other than your child going to a 4-year college degree? And for every single person, it was no. The only option they had was for their kid to go and do a 4-year college degree. Now, most of my friends and peers, they have been fairly successful. They can afford to send their kids have been well educated, right? So there's a selection bias there. But the only one of my friends whose child didn't go to a 4-year college degree and went to trade school had no idea that was going to happen until he was informed one day, during the college application process. So then you go, well, why do you want your kid to go to college? You're not considering anything else. Why do you want them to go? And they give me a litany of reasons, and none of them really had much grounding in science or anything to do with getting a good job afterwards. Because, if you think about it as an investment decision, and I'll stay US-centric for now, right? But people are spending tens of thousands of dollars and sometimes almost $100,000 a year to send their kid to college for 4 years. And one of the little known facts is that a 4-year college degree on average takes more than 5 years to complete because people make mistakes. They don't know what they're doing going in. They get distracted. There's lots and lots of reasons. And so right off the bat, whatever you think it's going to cost, it's probably going to cost 20% more. And when you look at it, it's going to be the largest expense that almost anyone ever makes. Because the only thing that would even compete with it is buying a house. But when you buy a house, you take on a lot of debt typically, and you spend a lot of money, but you at least have a house to live in. And the inconvenient fact about college is when you come out of college, number one, a lot of people drop out, so they never get a degree. We talked about people taking longer. But even for the people who graduate in 4 years, there's not a lot of evidence that it actually adds any value, that it increases your lifetime earning.
The light is fading fast from this old town, we gotta go. Our bags are packed, so what we waiting for? There's no point in delaying what we both already know. Escape this time with me. Escape this time with me.
And of course, people will go, well, that's not true. I hear all the time from politicians and of course from colleges themselves that college is really important, and they'll share stats. Like I saw one just the other day. It was college grads earn, $29,000 more a year in the United States than non-college grads. But unless you failed basic data analytics, I mean, like as a 12-year-old at school, you'd understand there's just a selection bias for that, because the people who go to college are typically in the top, or graduate from 4-year college degree, typically in the top third of academic potential. That means they're in the top third of motivation, basic intelligence, nurturing, the whole lot, okay? And the people who end up with no college degree typically are from the bottom third, which means, a lot of things. I mean, whatever their life path is, they're academically not prepared for college. And if they're not academically prepared for college, they're probably not going to be prepared for a higher income, more complex job. And so people hold on to these things as their proof that going to college pays off. And as I've looked for it, I found almost no evidence that it pays off at all. And especially when you dig behind the first level. And so you think of the madness that we have this system that is possibly the most powerful system in the world, which is specifically US colleges. Okay, almost every powerful person in the world has attended one, or has their kids there, or wants their kids to go there. So, their alumni network is super powerful. They are possibly the most subsidized group or organization or business in the world by far. And, when they have a problem such as, we've raised our costs so much because we run so efficiently that we're running out of money, they just get the federal government to give them more money. They also get the most free money in the form of donations of literally anything I can think of. So you've got this system that's massively subsidized, both from wealthy donors and from the government, charges huge fees anyway, that leads its customers massively in debt. And there's essentially no evidence that it adds value that justifies its cost. And I'm talking specifically at the undergraduate 4-year degree level. And that's like before you think about the disruption that's coming. I mean, we hear every day about some new AI tutor. And obviously, for at least 20 years, the monopoly that colleges had on knowledge has gone. So when I was an undergraduate, if I wanted to learn some things or understand some things or do a little bit of research for some paper I had to write, I had to go to the library. And a bunch of these books you couldn't remove from the library. So you had to sit in the library, read the book, take notes, right? And then you'd leave the book and they'd store it in a little shelf if you needed it for the next day, unless it was a really popular book, in which case too bad. And I think people today have forgotten like that. And that was a key purpose of the university, because books were very expensive, storing them and finding them was very expensive to do. So you had to gather, everyone had to travel somewhere to get access to knowledge. And of course, times have changed, and you can find out anything you want to know, in fact, too much. You can find out instantly. I mean, the problem now is figuring out like what you even need. You look up something on the internet, you have 5,000 searches on how to be a better public speaker or something. I mean, how do you even sift it? So we've got a different problem. But then the other thing that universities have provided is a monopoly on the transfer of knowledge. So they had the knowledge, and then it's how do they transfer the knowledge? And that's where they gathered the professors, and the lecturers and the teachers and things. They were gathered in this one place. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Some of it is just that, in the beginning when these models were formed, there just weren't many people going to university. I mean, there was only the top sort of 1 or 2% of people were going to university. So in your town or village, you'd be the only person of the right age who was going to go study. So you had to travel somewhere else, and they collected there. But also the people who knew how to transfer the knowledge and had the skills and the methods to do that and the material, they also had to travel there because they need to scale, right? But of course now, that's all in the past. I mean, if you are going to some Ivy League college in the United States, and you are studying some beginner's macroeconomics course, the chance that your professor is in the top 50 for transferring knowledge to you is basically zero, right? So even if you go to quote one of the best places in theory to do that. And so we have this absurd situation where we have these supposed elite places that are living on a past business model where in theory they're going to teach you really well. You pay a fortune to them, and the only thing we know for sure is the best person isn't there. The only way you can have the best person is through some curated, measured thing, on an online platform of teachers. And it sort of gets that's sort of some of the problem of the problem that's out there. That's sort of the biggest problem I could think of that would keep me interested to try dig into it and find some way to add value, and add value across the board, but mostly just from the human standpoint. I mean, I've been fortunate with my earlier career that I have the time and resources to sort of explore some different problems till I find a thing that really grabs me and works for me. And the size of the scale of this opportunity and problem is so vast. So it's like both. I believe as an entrepreneur, you really need to find two different forms of motivation. One is to be angry and sort of pissed off at some system that's broken and not serving people, right? And sort of just this like visceral sense of injustice and that it's wrong. It's not just inefficient, it's like really, really wrong what's happening. And in spite of, in this case, millions and millions of people all trying to do the right thing. Okay, so I'm not saying any individual is bad or whatever. I'm just saying the system's broken completely. And then you have the other side of the motivation, which is sort of the optimism of think how good it can be. Because as you know, I've spent quite a lot of time in different parts of the world. It's obvious I didn't grow up in the United States from my accent. And if you look at the number of people who are coming of age in the next 20 years that will be of college age, 90% of them live in poorer countries. Those countries can't afford our broken model that's super expensive, very divisive and divisive, certainly at the moment, and yet it's held up to be the pinnacle. And I just hope other nations around the world aren't even thinking of copying it, because 90% of the people are there, and we as a world can't afford to have those people not educated to the best of the ability that they can be, because we need productivity. We need productivity gains if we're going to solve the problems that we have. And so that's sort of the optimistic piece, is when you see how easy it is for people to learn in a new method, and there are problems that we need to solve in them, right? And that's what I'm focusing on solving. But many of the building blocks have been fixed to replace an undergraduate college degree. They've already been put in place. And I just hope that globally we can create a system that costs a very small amount of money and is very, very effective. And so we don't need to emulate this broken system globally.
We could rent a room and watch the stars dance round the moon, fall asleep to the sounds of the sea. With you right by my side, it's such a sweet life. Escape this time with me.
So as I spent more time looking into this space, I sort of asked myself, well, why is it such a mess? Why are people so unhappy? Why is there such a lack of value added? And fortunately, I studied engineering at university, and then I went on to work in consulting, and I founded my own consulting business. And we recruited directly out of elite universities. So 5 or 6 of the world's top universities, Oxford, Cambridge, MIT, those sorts of places. And we ran a very intense funnel of talent, both in selecting people, and then also when they joined the company, we spent a tremendous amount of time developing that talent. So during that, I learned, what are these people learning well, and what gaps do they have? But most importantly, in analyzing a business, I learned how to look at what's a business supposed to be doing and how do you get it to be more effective at delivering. So the first approach that when I again started digging deeper, and then I started working with one of my long-term collaborators, who's my business partner on this new venture that I'm in, Eric. Eric and I first started to take the engineering approach of how do we make college as it is more efficient and stuff. And we could figure we could cut it down to 2 years for a 4-year degree. But then we asked a different question, and it was, what's the purpose of college for undergraduate? Why do people ultimately attend or justify the great expense? And of course, when you get down to it, there's lots of like light things like growing up, time away from home. There's all these sorts of things. But of course, you can get those for free or almost nothing in other places. So it's got to be this sense of making you more attractive in the workplace. There's three groups really to talk about. One is entrepreneurs who form a successful business in college or straight out of college. It's such a small percent, it's not worth focusing on. So that's great. And we're actually highly focused on that with our new process, but that's not sort of really the answer to this question. The second is people who stay in academia forever, or they prolong it. Like, so they do their undergrad, then they do another year, then they do 2 more years. But eventually they also have to come out and sort of get a job unless they stay in forever. But the vast majority of people are going to leave college and they need a job provided by someone else. That's called an employer. So you need to understand, what does the employer want and what leads to success? So we did a bunch of research, secondary research. So we looked at other people's research across the board, a sort of meta study, looking to answer 2 questions. One is, what does peer-reviewed academic research tell us leads to a successful career in life? And not surprisingly, this has been studied for 100 years or more. And it's really, really clear. There's a list of traits, of attributes that people need to have to be successful. So, we were like, wow, that's interesting. And then we looked at, well, what do employers say in these, employee surveys? And, there's lots and lots of sources of this. I mean, there's a big study that Eton College in the UK did. Obviously, McKinsey's got one. I mean, a lot of the big firms have done them. So what do employers say on aggregate? What skills do you need to be successful and to get promoted? So there's the sort of hiring in the first place. You need to get into the company, then you'll be promoted. And so there's a list of skills. People list them all different ways. It's not like, your nice 3-point checklist or whatever, but we've aggregated that and created our list of critical skills, okay? So when we took that and then we looked at, because now if you know what the goal is, because unless you start with a goal in mind, then it's very hard to achieve it, right? So we took a look at that and we then compared it to our personal experiences at college, the experiences of my, friends and children's friends and their children who are there now, and our personal knowledge, of course, from reading what's going on and visiting. And we, what we discovered is it's just not organized to develop these skills or teach these, develop these skills or develop these attributes, right? And it's because it's organized in the past. It's like a 200-year-old model that's built on knowledge and technical expertise in a narrow field. And that is the organizing structure for a university. Well, the theoretically productive part, the administration's totally different. And like there's like one admin for every student at Stanford or something I read. So that's a whole different thing. But in terms of the value added part, that's the real reason for it to exist for an undergraduate, it's organized that way. So you can imagine like a bunch of vertical lines and each one is some specialist field. Like, I talked about economics, you might have chemistry department. There's lots of different fields and they're organized that way. But these skills and attributes don't care about the knowledge. And in fact, the world doesn't care about the knowledge anymore because it's completely commoditized. As I said, anything you want to learn, you can learn straight away. You can become a near expert on any subject in 2 weeks. And I'll like ban that. Let's say no more than 99% of the people on the planet. And so you're like, who cares about the knowledge? Employers don't really care. I mean, most of the high-end jobs, I mean, there are some particular technical ones, but most of the high-end jobs, they don't care what you studied at university, like your technical subject. They want to know that you can learn. Okay, and so you look at it and you go, okay, so they're organized with these vertical lines, these departments. And if you talk to them, you'll say, hey, what about critical thinking? How are you doing on teaching critical thinking. They'll be like, oh yes, of course we teach critical thinking, and you know, all the different departments will say they do that, but none of them really are. Like, you'd want a department of critical thinking. Like, that's how you'd want to be organized. So you'd want to be orthogonally organized, you know, like imagine now horizontal lines. And these would be these different skills and attributes. And of course they would intersect with other things. But that's like I just think the whole model and structure is wrong. And so although they all say they do these things, again, just like the macro investment decision of does it pay off to go to college is very questionable. Even when you look at something like critical thinking, there are almost no studies that analyze whether any value is added in critical thinking at universities. But we found one. We found a study of 2,000 people. They took people at the very beginning of their first year and they measured their critical thinking abilities, and then they measured them at the beginning of their third year, so 2 years later. Half the people, this is at universities, right? Half the people showed no improvement in critical thinking in that time. And if you think about it, if you got a job at McDonald's, and worked your way up to be shift manager in a McDonald's restaurant, and you're 18 years old, you're then 19 years old, right? You have to utilize critical thinking and things like that, right? I've got to believe that they would have an increase, you know, in critical thinking. So, you know, what's the default? And so it's not surprising there aren't a lot of these studies being done, because I think the truth is very inconvenient that by organizing in a way where you're not measuring how people are performing in these skills and attributes, it's not even a stated goal, okay? There's no independent measurement of the value that you're adding at all at any university I'm aware of in the United States. There's no, we measure you coming in, we measure you coming out, here's the value add, right? Like if you went to a gym and you had your fitness trainer and you're going to work with them 6 months, and at the beginning you can do 3 push-ups. At the end, they don't even measure you. You know, it's like you'd never do anything like that, right? But apparently here we can. And so anyway, we looked at those, and so you've got to start with a goal in mind. You've got to understand what's wrong with the current service, and then you've got to build something that fixes that. And that's what we're doing. One of the lovely things from an entrepreneurial standpoint is people really like this concept. There are so many people who realize that college is really just a place to park your kid for a bunch of time while they, you know, take some drugs and drink and fall in love and sleep in late and stuff, right? Which is all part of growing up. I don't want to knock that. It's just the waste of time of going to a few lectures and paying a vast sum of money for them. But people like this concept. And then the other thing is there's not many people really focused on this holistically at the moment. I'm hoping to change that, because to solve this problem, we need millions and millions of people activated in a different way. And what it means is doing anything in this space adds value. Like literally doing anything, just attempting to develop people on these skills and attributes, doing a bit of research, learning, experimenting at it. And so, you know, what we've been doing in building our knowledge is obviously a lot of reading and the usual sort of thing. But then in terms of real practical applied stuff, as you start to incubate a business, you know, we ran a 1-week course at MIT in January, their independent activities period. And then we're now starting with, we got 2 summer camps that we filled for this summer. And we have our curriculum built out, and we're now teaching kids this. And so the great thing is they get at least exposed to what it takes to be successful, because currently at the moment it's sort of a mystery. It shouldn't be, it's all available. But, you know, I don't know that any of my children at their schools have been sat down and gone, oh, here's what it actually takes to be successful. You might want to start paying attention to it. And then they'd say, hey, do you have any resources to help me? And they go, oh, no, but, you know, try this thing called the internet. I mean, there's lots of ways you can get help, but yeah, so that's what we're up to.
On the road, I've been away for far too long, but now I'm on my way back home. I hear the west winds calling out my name. They telling me to head your way, down your road and past your gates. Keep your eyes on the horizon. I was looking to belong when I'd already found my home.
What can we do about this? What can the future look like? How do we solve this? Because it's all very well to understand something's broken. It's all very well to start to do some work to fix it. But like, what's the end state and how do we get there? So my vision is that when you ask these questions that I framed up in the past, there's a clear answer. That's what I'm hoping for. So number one, have you considered an alternative to a four-year degree? Yes. Is there a viable choice that is socially acceptable? You know, because at the moment it's not really socially acceptable if, you know, you're in certain segments of society in the United States to not have your child go to a four-year degree. So essentially we need to, there's a future where there's competition. Because we all know that where there's no competition, you know, a system just degrades. You know, it's like entropy. Every business, every system is trying to perform at its lowest possible state all the time, unless there's a force to drive it up, right? So we need competition. And that competition will come in the form of very focused, disaggregated offerings, right? So at the moment you buy a four-year degree, it's meant to be your brand of prestige. It's meant to be your time to grow up. It's how you build a network. It's how you make friends. It's how you learn technical knowledge, right? It's all mixed into one, which is why it's such a mess. So our solution is to break that all apart. So your technical knowledge, you'll learn online. You know, nobody wants to just learn online in the basement, of course, but you know, you'll also have, there'll be things you don't understand. You'll have an AI tutor. Okay, and in some cases, if you're unfortunate, you might have real life human beings teaching you. You'll have study groups, and of course, then where you want to live in community, great. So there'll be many options for you to live in community, all over the place. You could be local. You could just form local. You know, at every different price point and what fits different people in different socioeconomic groups and different regions culturally, right? So you can just be part of a local community in your town. You can, you know, you can travel. I mean, one of the things I always laugh at is all these people who are at university learning a language, like take French. Why are they learning French in Connecticut? Like, why don't you go to France? So like if you're learning French, you'd be studying your online courses. You'd actually be living with French people in a French-speaking country, you know, that sort of thing. So you still be in community. You still have that socializing. You still be able to network with people. And so you deal with that way. And then how do we teach people these other skills and things? Well, we would, you know, what we're doing at Futures Forge is we've got a one-year program we're developing. We've got some other components as well, but our flagship offering, which we're going to start in 18 months' time as our launch class, that's what our build is to at the moment. It is all focused around developing these critical skills and attributes in you so that you come away and understand what they are. You've made your first steps. You know, number one, you know what they are, right? Number two, you know that they can be changed, i.e. that they're mutable. You know, to be mutable means that you can change them, right? So that you can, and presumably you want to improve them. And also that you have the link to how they help you perform, right? So that's our whole pedagogy within our course. So that's one offering we all have. And then when you look at other more, you know, as I said, I was an engineer. So you go, well, what about something like engineering? Well, I've talked to a number of you know, engineering professors in multiple countries, and we reckon that we can run the practical team-based, you know, lab-based side of, say, a mechanical engineering degree in 6 months. So you imagine the current state. You have some, you know, like my old university, Oxford, right? So I studied engineering science at Oxford. They recruit in a bunch of people. Well, what you find out is half the people decide they don't want to do engineering halfway through the degree. So you kind of wasted that slot. Like there's a lot of money and time put into that. So they're not going to be engineers. Then actually in my day, it was way more than half. Then you've got people who turned out not to be strong enough, right? You brought them in, you maybe misjudged them. They're in the bottom 20% of the class, you know, half of them drop out. But also they don't have a great time. They're not necessarily additive to the community. So how about a totally different model where a place like Oxford runs a 1-year program, and to get in, you have to pass their tests, that they give their first-year students and their second-year students in all their math and physics and all that, but they're trained elsewhere, like in a different system that's helping them focus on growing up, making better decisions, building grit, building their adaptability to situations, all the things that help you succeed in life. And then they have to do some work experience, because that's all critical part of our program, understand what you're motivated. And now they understand, no, I do want to do engineering, or I do want to do medicine, or I do want to do one of these more vocational sort of degrees. And so the institution can focus on the value add that they can bring, with their specific expertise, because you'd make it a 1-year program because you'd also want them to have a chance to look into some research as well, because we want to keep the funnel open to new knowledge. Okay. And undergraduate intake is a funnel to find people who are going to make the great discoveries of the future, right? But now what you've done is you can probably, with the same resource, you can probably at least 5x, probably 10x the output of qualified super talent. And we talk about accessibility, into places. That would mean that so many more people would get a chance to have the brand and attain the quality of and build a network from and add to some of our great institutions, which I don't want to go away. I just want them to start performing better, right? And so that's sort of my vision holistically, and then specifically with a vocational subject that I obviously, is close to my heart.
I was looking to belong when I already found my home.
If you want to learn more about what we're doing and support us, then please go to our website. It's futuresforge.org. You'll find a whole bunch of material on the science behind what we're doing. You'll also find details on the courses that we are creating and that we've launched so far and are preparing for. We have a book planned to come out in the fall. Feel free to, our contact details are available there. Send us a note of support and think about who who could benefit from learning more about this. Which friends, which, people's kids that could benefit from this, especially that the world is turning over, right? The jobs of today are disappearing faster than ever. If your kid's going to college today, the job that they're probably planning to do won't exist when they graduate. There'll be something new. And so you got to look at developing different skills in the people that you love, and we have the resources to help you do that. So point them in our direction.
21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.
Imagine a space where triumphs, trials, and tales of entrepreneurship come alive. Welcome to the 21st Century Entrepreneurship Podcast, a gold awarded journey hosted by Martin Piskarik, connecting with listeners in 95 countries and ranking in the top 0.5% of all podcasts. Join our exclusive community, elevate your perspective, and embark on the path to success.